Over 5,000 people were killed between 2009 and 2014. On January 3, 2015 alone, the group killed an estimated number of 2,000 people in the village of Bata, northeast Nigeria, and still have hundreds in custody. All efforts by Nigeria, Africa's biggest economy, to contain the group have been defied. The Boko Haram sect was started in 2002 by Mohammed Yusuf in Maiduguri, capital of northeastern state of Borno, Nigeria. By 2009, the sect had evolved under different nicknames such as Muhajirun, Yusufiya, and Nigerian Taliban, with membership estimated to be a few hundred. 6 years on, the group has grown, with membership estimated in thousands. The sect's violent trajectory began with riots and clashes with the police in 2004 and again in 2009 with an attack on a Bauchi State police station in which over 700 persons perished. Mohammed Yusuf, leader of the sect, died in police custody. Since the death of Yusuf, Boko Haram has undergone many changes under the leadership of Abubakar Shekau, a former deputy to Yusuf. But how will a sect established for religious purposes suddenly metamorphose into a militant group?
When a religious sect suddenly becomes a militant group, it means that they have lost the balance between reason and faith. The two, reason and faith, can only be identified but not separated. You need the two to go together. So when it happens like this, it means that too much emphasis is put on faith to the neglect of reasoning. And so that is always the result.
In every religion of the world, you find sects that emerge and express a kind of orientation and understanding that can be deviant. Yeah. So in almost every religion of the world, you can find some of these things happening. And I think Islam is no exception. So the Boko Haram and what they are doing is one expression of such deviations. So the mainstream Islam is there, operating and existing, and coexisting with other religions. There's no fight. And yet you can find a certain strand of the same religion emerging and saying that what the mainstream is doing is rather aberrant or a deviation. I think that it is one of the deviations. And normally in life, you find people, even in politics, within one same political party, for example, you can find a section that moves away and comes with a certain new viewpoint and feels so passionate. And that passion translates in a certain kind of militancy and insurgency, which then a certain response must also be given to that.
Now, to look at it from another perspective, religion tries to proffer solutions to social or socio-economic problems. And when you look at where these issues are happening mostly, even in places like Saudi Arabia, which has been very rich, the growth in the youth and unemployment. So people are going back to religion and see how can we solve unemployment, how can we solve corruption, and they see a few people in society very rich. These are the kind of things that are making people feel that a back to the future or going to a purely theocratic society whereby morality governs the day, then people can be what? Satisfied with life. People can live everybody according to his needs, and not you see one person being very rich and one person. So the problems of the modern state, some are looking at it from purely an Islamic perspective. Women should not work, people should not have outrageous profits from their businesses. They must take care of the need and that sort of thing. But when you look at the Western capitalist society, it's a kind of survival of the fittest, and everybody for himself, and society just sets rules. So this is it.
The philosophy of the sect is rooted in the practice of Orthodox Islam, which in the interpretation abhors everything Western, including formal education and a social lifestyle. This explains why the group has been nicknamed Boko Haram, meaning Western education is evil. They reject any scientific theory that they see as running contrary to the teachings of Allah. For instance, they believe rain is a creation of God rather than a process involving evaporation and condensation. Members of the sect are fully convinced that the moral and social decadence has eaten deep into the fabric of the Nigerian society and are resolved to rid the society of corruption and moral bankruptcy by establishing a Puritan Islamic society devoid of political corruption and moral deprivation. Those who do not fit into this philosophy are regarded as non-believers and wrongdoers.
Wanda ya zo ya tuba ya koma ga Allah ya taya wa Qur'ani da sunnan Annabi shi dan uwanmu ne. Wanda ya je ya taya wa Francois Hollande ya taya wa Obama kamar yadda ya taya wa Bush ada da Clinton, ya taya wa Isra'ila, ya taya wa arnan duniya, shi maƙiyinmu ne. Dan gabanmu ne, abun kashewanmu ne, bawa ne.
This spiritual philosophy is central to the group and provides a fundamental basis not only for recruitment but also for motivating members to action. Not surprisingly, many top Islamic leaders and mosques have been attacked by the sect. Central to the philosophy of Boko Haram is the concept of jihad. What is jihad in Islam?
Jihad is the spirit behind the desire and attempt to propagate Islam to every corner of the world. And this spirit can be found in other religions also, especially in religions that are supposed to be universal or global or missionary religions. Talk of missionary religions, I'll be talking about Islam, about Christianity. These are the two major missionary religions you can think about in the world today. Missionary because they are global, they are universal. They expect to extend their messages. And that spirit in these religions cannot rest in the heart of the believers unless it has given its expression in the nature of the desire and in fact accomplishing the mission by extending it to other parts of the world. And it is clear, if you go to Christianity, you find it there. If you come to Islam, you find it. So that is the spirit of jihad at one level. The other spirit of jihad has to do with your internal purification, the fighting your inner self. And indeed, that should be the starting point of any true jihadist. Any true jihadist must begin by waging the jihad. Jihad means a struggle, an exertion of effort. In this particular case, exertion effort in the cause of propagation of Islamic values. And for you to be able to do so, in fact, it's an expectation, it's a requirement that you begin with yourself, your inner cleansing and sincerity, how you fight your own inner tendencies that makes you sinful and wicked and evil. You win the battle inside you. Before then, you can now qualify to go outside.
Jihad simply means holy war. And you have two types. But literally, jihad means striving or struggling to overcome something. So you have the greater jihad, which is the internal struggle or the Islamic asceticism to overcome maybe a sin inside you, which I would go in for. We also have the lesser jihad, which is the external fight against other nations to conquer the Islamic community, or against those that are fighting against the Islamic community. So the Ummah, we call it. So I think what Muhammad meant was the internal jihad. That is this internal struggle or fight to overcome sin in your lives, not the external one that you go to fight to conquer other nations for Islam.
Boko Haram is currently operating mainly in northern Nigeria, but has bases and carries out operations in neighboring Cameroon, Chad, and Niger. Nigeria's socio-economic and political dynamics have provided a fertile ground for the group to operate. The country's political system has not been stable since independence. It has been stained with series of coups and counter-coups. The society generally succeeded in implanting rampant corruption among a political and wealthy elite that is heavily invested in the status quo. A huge gap between aspirations of Nigeria's youth and the opportunities provided by the system for achieving a better life. A lack of critical infrastructure and basic support services. A history with long periods of military dictatorship and political oppression, a swelling population and economic despair, a system in which entrenched ethnic identities are politicized and constrain opportunities for individual aspirations. These problems are compounded at the national level as political power has long been held by leaders from the north until 1999 when democratic rule shifted power to the Yoruba as General Olusegun Obasanjo became president. The North-South conflict over the presidency became even more complicated with the informal power-sharing agreement known as zoning between North and South. The agreement seemed to promise political stability. The death of President Yar'Adua, resulting in the transfer of power to Vice President Goodluck Jonathan and his subsequent election in 2011, however, resulted in increasing tensions and the threat to survival of the arrangement and the political order.
In Nigeria per se, the unwritten code is that the Northerners are the rulers, the Yorubas are the intellectuals, and the Igbos are the industrialists or the business people. This has come about largely from indirect rule, whereby because of the organized system of the Fulani Hausa group, they were used largely in propagating indirect rule. And Northerners believe that Southerners are indisciplined and they cannot govern. But that said and done, in democracy, there is no such clear-cut type of watertight compartmentalization that some people are bound to be rulers and that sort of thing. But then perfectly, this feeds into Boko Haram's philosophy in the sense that they are seeing a Christian who says he's a president over what they regard largely as a Muslim state. So that is a form of what haram to them, or something that is unacceptable to them.
The government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has put in much effort and resources to contain this Boko Haram menace, but the group seems to be getting stronger.
I think the federal government has done a lot in containing the Boko Haram ragtag army to the eastern corner of northern Nigeria, especially to their enclave in the Sambisa forest and the surroundings of that area. The federal government has used persuasion. The federal government has used education. The federal government has used diplomacy. And as final solution, we're applying some military efforts. You see, we have to be wary of the same international community that will soon start condemning us if we descend heavily on these people. Hence, the federal government of Nigeria is doing it very cautiously. We don't just want to go there and start bombing or start killing people. We will just be like them too. So we believe in using very mature approach to dealing with it. And like the president said, and I share his views, sooner than later, this nuisance to the Nigerian community will be taken care of.
The fight against Boko Haram has been complicated by two very important factors. Firstly, there appears to be real complicity between government officials and the militants. Among those who have been arrested and charged with assisting Boko Haram was a sitting federal senator from the ruling People's Democratic Party, that's the PDP, Mohammed Ali Indume of Borno State. President Goodluck Jonathan acknowledged that the militants have sympathizers and enablers throughout the government. He said some of the informants and enablers are in the executive arm of the government, some of them are in the legislative arm, while some are even in the judiciary. Secondly, the group has managed to situate itself as Nigeria's Islamic vanguard and guardian of northern interests, and at the same time portraying the Jonathan government as a Christian safeguard. Any hard-heartedness could be framed by hardliners as Christian persecution and therefore gives Boko Haram useful recruiting tool while further delegitimizing the Jonathan government in the eyes of many Northerners. Despite all these challenges, the government is resolute and convinced that Boko Haram will be overcome.
We'll get to the root of it. If you want to destroy cancer, cancer is a disease that takes a while to defeat until you get to the root of it. Like I told you ab initio, they do not have an address, no barracks. They live amongst us. So it will take a while. Historically, such ragtag army is not easy to defeat because they live with you. They don't have where you can really see this is where you can get them. They attack, fizzle away, melt back into society only to regather again to attack. But look, only day before yesterday, 120 of them were killed by the Nigerian army. So with education, a lot of people will not join them. Fighting poverty, a lot of people will not join them. Diplomacy, a lot of people will not join them. Finally, military might will deter people from joining them. And that's the careful path that the federal government of Nigeria has followed.
Nigerians were expected to go to the polls on Saturday, February 14, 2015, to elect a president and members of the House of Representatives and the Senate. However, the country's Independent Electoral Commission postponed the elections to March 28, 2015, citing threats posed by Boko Haram. While the Nigerian government has vowed to defeat the group before the new election date, the sect, led by Abubakar Shekau, has threatened to disrupt the process. On its last summit in January 2015, the General Assembly of the African Union committed to sending 7,500 troops to help fight Boko Haram, a move Nigeria has been reluctant to accept, but ONEP sees it as a necessity.
Given the performance of the Nigerian military in international peacekeeping operations, I would argue that Nigeria have the expertise, they have the number of soldiers to deal with Boko Haram. But these days, the fight against terrorism and insurgency is not a one country show. So if you look at the countries bordering the northeastern part of Nigeria, it is Chad, it is Niger, it is Cameroon. Now, to start with, 2 out of these countries are not even within the ECOWAS community. So ECOWAS leadership cannot even put pressure on them to join Nigeria. So you need something higher that brings all these countries together, which is the African Union. Then, of course, that also in itself, because of the nature of the operation, brings in the element of the United Nations. So you need to take authority from the United Nations Security Council, so that way. And the good thing for me is that the special representative of the Secretary General to West Africa, Dr. Ibn Chambers, already alluded to that the UN is committed to supporting Nigeria in that direction. And I think, and I saw that after the meeting between Chambers and the President of Nigeria, there is a willingness to allow the UN system to coordinate these efforts. The Nigerian army will still play a very important role. Knowledge of the terrain is very key. But countries like Niger, Chad, and Cameroon that also have been in the desert can also play a very important role. And that way, you can be sure that if Nigeria is pursuing or subduing Boko Haram, as it were, they are not pursuing them into another country within the zone.
Interestingly, Boko Haram is fighting the influence of Western civilization and anything associated with it, whilst at the same time making use of products of the West, which happen to advance their interest. Their employment of modern automobile, bombs, AK-47, internet, mobile phones, and other products of the West indicates that Boko Haram is more than prepared to conform to Western values when those values are in their interest. But will Boko Haram ever be overcome?